CEO and Medical Director of the ENT Institute, here with my co-host,
Melissa Moritz, Chief Accountability Officer. I forgot who I was for a quick
That's
second.
all right. Why? Because you probably are in post-yoga dementia.
Wow.
So today, am I going to die from yoga, of all things? We actually had a viewer reach out to say, oh, could I die from yoga? So I'm very interested in this because I did yoga not long ago and thought I was going to die, right? It was hot yoga as opposed to cold yoga. No, just normal room temperature. But, you know, they put you in this oven and then they want you to do these poses. But let me tell you what, I'm a big believer in yoga. It's a combination of physical attributes and mental, spiritual attributes. And I do like that. But I don't know as much about yoga as Melissa does. So tell people about what's yoga?
Well, it's a way to work out and sweat out your toxins, right?
Well, we're going to debate that in the mess. But
I went
anyway, yeah, you did. All of this episode is based on a story from a Maryland woman who suffered a massive stroke after reporting tearing an artery, essentially in her neck, while she was doing a yoga pose. And this happened in October 2017. Had a CT scan that showed specifically the blood vessel, and it revealed where she had a right coronary artery lesion, and the clot formed there and then caused the lack of blood flow to her brain. And lack of blood flow to the brain causes what we commonly call a stroke. That is a lack of blood flow. A hemorrhage is when you bleed into the brain, but a stroke is when you have decreased blood flow to the brain. And I generally would say that I am kidding, but not, you think you're going to die when you're doing yoga poses. It's something like any other athletic event. You have to get used to the activity, right? But in general, she could have been playing tennis. She could have been playing golf. She could have been lifting weights. She could have been doing multiple other things. She could have been having a massage and done the same thing. She just happened to be doing yoga. But I think it's interesting that we're talking about can you die from yoga, because really when I'm in there, I think I'm going to die. But you like yoga a lot. I'm not against it, but,
I guess I like to go on the edge of life and death right there.
Well, it shouldn't, but I tell you, the other day I was doing yoga and it was hot, and I guess it was about 95 degrees. So there's some yogas that actually carry it up to 104 degrees.
Yeah,
It's
Bikram.
And it's like, wow, I mean, really, who wants to be inside a warming oven and do something strenuous? So, yes, we can get right into the myths.
Yeah,
too.
well, and I jumped right in there because I really thought you could, and I always say I'm going to go to yoga, hot yoga, and sweat out my toxins.
Well, I know, but you're the person who also says, I had acupuncture, now I don't have allergies either.
We need to talk about that.
Okay, that's a whole different
It
subject.
totally worked.
Well, let's
But we'll go back
another
to
day.
yoga.
Am I going to die from allergies? Wow, how appropriate. So
We did that one.
Well, you can. There are elements of excretion, if you will, in sweat, because sweat is there to help cool the body. That's why we sweat. But most of the excretion of toxins is through the kidneys. That's how the body works. You can excrete some things through sweat and all.
What can you excrete through sweat?
I don't know. My rehab man here behind the camera, he hasn't been in rehab, but he worked at a rehab, says, alcohol. There are several. I don't have that list, but some things can be excreted in the sweat. We do know that.
I thought it was
most
toxins.
Well, toxins could be anything. I mean,
All
exercise
the bad
causes
ones.
free radicals, okay? Exercise is supposed to be healthy for you. You create free radicals, which damage you as well. So, everything's come somewhere in between.
Does yoga do that?
There's a give and take. There's a good and a bad. Yes, but yoga does a lot of good too.
Yes.
Right?
So how about these facts? So before
Okay.
we get into myths, it can help you fight depression. I do believe I've used yoga through some pretty hard life changes. And I think yoga is a great way of exercise and meditation, so to speak, spiritual connection, staying mindful. Yoga definitely helps with staying mindful and present, because if you're not mindful, a lot of the yoga poses, you'll just lose your balance and fall over if you're not. focusing.
It does, and we tend to lose our balance as we age just because we tend not to exercise as much as one reason. But, improves your quality of life. In fact, there was a study done, 135 seniors were assigned to one of many groups for 6 months, walking, yoga, or a control group which did neither. And the study found that women also, well, there were multiple other studies, but the one included women who had breast cancer undergoing chemotherapy. Yoga decreased symptoms of chemo, such as nausea and vomiting, and also improved their overall quality of life. But lots of studies have shown that yoga helps because it's not just the intensity, if you will, of the, if you want to call it exercise, stretching, but it's about a spiritual, soulful component to it. It's not just about it's about alignment.
When you're tight in certain areas, you have to, it's spiritually you're opening up. So it helps you to open up the hip flexors, for example, and a lot of negative energies are held in your hips.
Well, because, I don't know if I believe the energy part, but I tell you, when you have muscle that is spasmed, right, it does help. So I have a partially herniated disc, and so yoga does help me. It lengthens the spine, the space between the intervertebral spaces. So we know that helps, right?
I go with the spirit and the energy.
When
goes with the facts of the science.
Well, I'm being a scientist now.
Right.
I mean, I can hug a tree.
How about it helping to relieve migraines? There is a study done that it would help to relieve migraines. Why? It helps to stimulate the vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve.
Oh, no.
Vegas.
That's why
not
he's
as in
the
Las
doctor
Vegas, but
and
anyway,
I'm not.
Well, but you generally, after you've been in yoga for an hour and a half, I promise you will sleep better.
Yes.
So sleep's important. Improves flexibility and balance. Flexibility is important, certainly for me. That's why I do it. It's hard for me to stand straight-legged and touch the ground, but after about an hour and a half in hot yoga, then you can do that, no doubt. There's no doubt that just the stretching component of it.
Isn't it like Gumby?
Key, right? Creating Gumby, right?
Wow.
And you can increase your strength and balance doing it. So lots of pluses.
So the myths: only flexible people can do yoga.
No, I've learned, because I would say that I'm one of the most inflexible people out there, and I'm talking about the body, not the mind. Okay, I'm flexible, right? But I run typical guy, just not as flexible. So, stiff is dead. So we all need to make sure we're flexible. And I like it for that purpose.
They'll get stiff.
So anybody can do yoga.
So yoga is only for the thin, beautiful young people.
Well, no, because I promise you, I've been to yoga class, and I'm going to tell you, there were maybe 1 out of 20 of those in there.
But who was looking?
So, yeah, well, I was in the back of the room. I couldn't help. Right.
So I did yoga, practiced yoga for 1 year straight to be able to get the headstand done, the inverted headstand. And the one thing that inspired me the most was a man in one of my yoga classes that had what I call is a beer belly, like a legitimate looked pregnant beer belly. And he could do a headstand and I couldn't. So that was the driving force between my reaching my goal to do a headstand. Well, I was like, I got to be able to do that. So it's not always about being thin. It isn't. Yoga is a religion. I've never heard this myth.
Well, I haven't either, but it is more than just stretching or creating strength and balance. I mean, it is a time I find to zone out, right? To quiet your mind, because honestly, it takes all the effort you can to maintain some of these poses, so you're really focused on
it's
that.
definitely not a religion, and then this one, yoga is too easy. You got to find the right yoga studio.
You're not doing the right thing if it's too easy, because it is not easy. It may seem to be, but to keep your hips totally aligned, over your knees, and then turn your upper body either on the ground or standing up, it's huge.
You will get more out of yoga if you do it in hot yoga versus regular yoga.
Well, I think that's individual. I don't know. I think hot yoga is great because once you warm up, things are more pliable. So having only done hot yoga one time, but I think that's the way to go.
So
That's an opinion.
the most, here's an interesting thing, and then we can kind of wrap it up, but the 4 most dangerous yoga poses.
Okay, this is all you.
Okay.
Because I have
The shoulder stand is dangerous. Standing forward bend is dangerous. And the bound triangle pose. And then the final one is the camel pose, which is what this woman, her artery exploded.
Well,
caused a
exploded, I
stroke.
don't know. She had some exposed lining that caused a clot that then cut off.
Is that a genetic thing?
It can be, and it can be. There are conditions that predispose you to that. But also as we age, if you get plaques in the carotid arteries, the main arteries leaving the heart going to the brain, that you have 4 of them, and then you have multiple backup systems. So to have a stroke means it's pretty massive. But people are predisposed to that. Generally it's traumatic, meaning you're in an automobile accident, or you've been developing plaques for a long time, and you do some exercise that breaks the plaque, which then stimulates a clot formation. And that clot can form there and occlude, or it can go up to a smaller vessel, which is usually the case, and occlude that smaller vessel. That's the danger. But this lady just happened to be doing yoga when it occurred.
Right. I don't think it's the yoga that necessarily caused it.
No, and we could talk about many things like this related to the head and neck and what we do. I mean, you have people that have arteriovenous malformations that are playing football, and they could have fallen out of bed and caused it, but they happened to get hit on the football field. And this was inevitable. This was going to happen to this lady doing something, or a football player that has an arteriovenous malformation. They're born with it, and falling out of bed could have caused it, but they just happened to be on the football field at the time. So that's a great topic. Because
Are you going to die from yoga?
Only when I'm doing it do I think that I'm going to die from yoga. The reality is it's going to make you better.
I do believe that. So I encourage you to go find a yoga studio near you and start the practice. And don't be intimidated. When I first walked into yoga studios, it can be very intimidating. You see people who can do it all. And my best advice to somebody who's just trying it for the first time, and this is what a teacher once told me, it's just being in the yoga studio and sitting on your mat is yoga. So the breathing techniques, if you can follow those through, what the instructor is saying, that is yoga. So, do it, try it. Don't be, I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but.
Yeah, well, you gotta try.
Discouraged by not being able to go in there on day one, be able to do a headstand. It took me a year with practice 2 to 3 times a week to do the headstand, and it's using your core.
So it's great for core training. Listen, it's great. It's spiritual. It's a lot of great attributes.
So you're not going to die.
No, not going to die from doing yoga. In fact, it may help you live longer.
There you go. So if you have any suggestions or questions or topics you'd like to see us cover on a Thursday during an Am I Going to Die segment, give us a comment, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. We hope that you're enjoying these and also seeking some value. And go try yoga.